My name is Ellie, and I turned my father in. The first time I said it, nothing came out. My lips moved, but my throat tightened. When the man who's supposed to protect you becomes the one who destroys you, there's no script to follow. But I knew I had to speak, because staying silent meant protecting him, and I don't want to protect anyone anymore. When I was a kid, I thought my dad was a hero. Little girls are supposed to love their fathers, right? I did. Or at least I told myself I did. I had to. My mom was always quiet. Her eyes looked like she hadn't truly slept in years. When she hugged me, I could feel her hands shaking. But back then, I didn't know why. Or maybe I didn't want to. We lived in a small town in Idaho, one of those places where everyone knows everyone, where gossip starts at church. My dad was one of the good ones. He helped neighbors, volunteered, always showed up at church events. My teachers loved him. One of them once said to me, "You're lucky to have a dad like him." I remember going home and crying in silence that day. I was 11, but life doesn't wait for you to grow up. I had to. It started with a dream. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, soaked in sweat. Always the same dream. A hand reaching for me, warm breath on my neck. I would wake up and still feel the cold in my room. People said it was just a nightmare. Maybe I believed that too, until the dreams became real. I was 12 the first time I felt his touch. My brain froze. I tried to convince myself I was dreaming, that it wasn't real. But it happened again, and again, and each time it went further. I didn't want to believe it. I needed a reason. I told myself I was wrong, confused, exaggerating, but I wasn't. And my mom? She knew. She had to. She wasn't blind. She'd lived with the same darkness. She had silenced herself long ago, and now she wanted me to do the same. One day she even said, "He just loves you too much." Her voice was flat, but her eyes were wet. That's when I realized my mother couldn't be saved either. From the outside, our house looked like a normal American home. A swing set in the yard, yellow porch lights, a Christmas tree in the window. But inside, it was rotting. Calling that man Dad felt like swallowing glass. Sharing a house with him made my stomach turn. But I didn't have anywhere else to go. No one I could trust. Who would believe me? When he tried to play with me, I would freeze. He smiled, calm, like nothing was wrong. That was the worst part, the normalcy. Life kept going. I still went to school. People still waved at me. But every day that I walked through our front door, I was dying a little more inside. And then something happened. One day at school, our guidance counselor showed us a video. The title was, "Abuse is Not Love." A girl on the screen looked right into the camera and said, "If your father kisses you and it makes you shiver, that's not love." My knees buckled. My world shifted. That was the moment I realized I was a victim. But I didn't want to stay one. Fear doesn't have a voice, but the body remembers. Mine did. At night, I would check my bedroom door lock twice, but I still didn't feel safe. I remember lying in bed, holding my breath. The strip of light under the door told me my dad was still awake. I had memorized the sound of his footsteps. When he was getting closer, when he turned away. It was like an alarm constantly ringing inside me. But on the outside, I was still the normal girl. Every day I smiled and said, "I'm fine," but I wasn't. My body started to notice the truth before my mind could. My hands would tremble, my stomach would churn for no reason, and my eyes would go blank in class. One day, my guidance counselor asked, "Is something wrong, Ellie?" I wanted to scream and tell her everything. but the words froze in my throat. I was afraid that if I said it out loud, there would be no going back. That night, I came home and saw my father sitting in front of the TV, watching some church program. He had the Bible in his lap, a blank look in his eyes, like he was someone else. But I knew better now, and I realized that I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was watching him, like you'd watch a caged animal. When does it attack? When does it sleep? Where is it weakest? I didn't want to be the victim anymore, but I still didn't know what to do. So I started writing, not like a diary, like evidence. I wrote down everything, what he did, what he said, where he stood, what night it happened. I changed my handwriting and stitched the notebook inside the lining of my backpack. Fear made me keep records. One night, my mom came into my room. She sat at the edge of my bed, facing the wall. She didn't say anything for a while. Then she finally whispered, "Don't ever tell anyone." I looked at her and thought, "You're part of him now." That moment, I knew I was alone. But I also felt free, because I was done protecting anyone. At school, they had posted a list of safe adults. I memorized it. Mr. Richards, the school counselor, was at the top. He always had a calm presence. One morning, I quietly knocked on his door. I walked in. The door closed. I sat down and looked at him. My hands were shaking when I said it. "My dad touches me." Something shifted in the air. He didn't speak right away. He just looked into my eyes and then nodded. "You can tell me, Ellie," he said. "This is a safe place." And I told him. I didn't cry. I trembled, but I spoke clearly. I had written it down so many times. It was memorized. I took the notebook from my backpack and placed it on his desk. "It's all in here," I said. Everything after that feels like a blur. Child services, caseworkers, police, they were all in our house within days. When my dad looked at me again, for the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Fear. He still thought he could control me, but he couldn't. Not anymore. I saw a panic in his eyes, and I knew then. This story wasn't his anymore. It was mine. They came for him 2 days after I gave Mr. Richards the notebook. It was a Wednesday. Cold, gray skies. I was sitting in my history class when the school office called my name over the intercom. My legs turned to stone. I thought I'd feel relief. I thought I'd feel safe. But instead, my heart raced like I was being hunted. A police officer was waiting for me. He wasn't angry or cold. He was kind, calm, like he knew I'd been living underwater and was about to breathe air for the first time. He said, "You don't have to go back home. You're coming with us." And I nodded, even though my whole body was shaking. They placed me in a quiet room at Child Protective Services. There was a couch, some toys, a blanket someone had knitted. A woman brought me a cup of tea I didn't touch. Another woman read my notebook, page by page. No one said anything for a while. They didn't have to. I could hear their breathing shift as they reached the worst parts. I watched their hands tremble. That's how I knew they believed me. That's how I knew it was finally real, not just in my head. Later that evening, a different officer asked me if I wanted to be there as they brought him in. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I wanted him to see my face. Maybe I wanted to prove that I wasn't afraid anymore. Maybe I just wanted to look the monster in the eye and not blink. When they let him in, he was wearing the same brown coat he always did. His hair was a little messy. His eyes were scanning the room until they landed on me. And for the first time in my life, my father didn't look powerful. He didn't look righteous or holy or in control. He looked small, cornered, like a rat. He opened his mouth, probably to say something twisted, some manipulative thing he'd rehearsed 100 times. But I didn't give him the chance. I stood up, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "You don't get to speak anymore." His face dropped, his mouth closed, and I turned around and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because for the first time, I knew he had nothing left to take from me. That night, I stayed with a foster family. A woman named Carol gave me a warm meal and a soft bed. She didn't ask too many questions. She just said, "Sleep. You're safe now." But sleep didn't come easy. My body still expected the creak of floorboards, the shift in air, the shadow in the hallway. Even without him near, the fear lingered. Because trauma doesn't vanish the moment the abuser is gone. It hangs in the corners of your thoughts. It whispers in your dreams. But something else was there too. Quiet, unfamiliar, but real. A beginning. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was free. I was still broken, yes, but I was free. And that meant everything. The trial lasted 5 months. Every day I sat in that courtroom, watching my father hide behind a cheap suit and a carefully rehearsed mask. He lied, over and over again. They showed the notebook. They read my words out loud. He flinched. I didn't. They showed photos, old reports, patterns. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding, a mistake. But even the jury could see the truth. Truth doesn't stutter. I didn't cry when the verdict came in. I didn't smile either. I just breathed. For the first time in my life, I took a breath that didn't feel borrowed. He was sentenced to 38 years in prison. People said justice was served. But there's no number of years that can return a stolen childhood. Justice isn't a finish line. It's a door that opens. And behind it, healing begins. That's what they don't tell you. That the hardest part isn't telling. It's surviving afterward. You carry it with you, into every room, every relationship, every silence. I moved to a different town, changed schools, changed my name, but no matter how far I ran, my past ran with me. I'd flinch when someone walked too close. I'd freeze if someone raised their voice. I hated pity. I hated the phrase, "You're so strong." I didn't want to be strong. I just wanted to be okay. There's no roadmap for healing, no step by step. Some days I felt fine. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. And that's okay. That's survival too. Years passed. I graduated. I studied psychology. I wanted to understand why people hurt the ones they should protect. I wanted to make sure kids like me didn't grow up thinking love is supposed to feel like fear. One day, I was invited to speak at a survivor panel. I almost said no, but then I remembered something. When I was 12, I saw a video. A girl looked into the camera and said, "If it makes you shiver, it's not love." That sentence changed my life, so I stood in front of a room full of strangers, held the mic with shaking hands and said, "My name is Ellie," and I turned my father in. They say when you speak the truth out loud, it loses its power over you. That's not always true. Some truths just never stop echoing. But something does change. Your voice becomes louder than the silence. If you're listening to this, and you're scared, and you think no one would believe you, I want you to know I'm here. I believe you. You are not dirty. You are not broken. You are not what they did to you. You are more. And the moment you stop protecting them, you start protecting yourself. This is not just my story. This is what happens in quiet houses, behind smiling doors, under warm lights. This is what happens when people look away. So please, don't look away. Only listen. Believe. And if you can, Be the voice someone else is too scared to use. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, "It happened, and I survived."